This video is on installing rear sets. The rear sets are being installed on a 2006 Suzuki GSX-R 1000. I chose Woodcraft brand rear sets for two reasons. First is for durability. I've witnessed a couple of crashes recently. In both crashes, the Woodcraft products held up nicely and prevented additional damage to the bike. Of course, the foot pegs were ground off as in both crashes, but that's the intent, and the foot pegs are replaceable. The second reason I chose Woodcraft was price. The kit I purchased uses the stock foot brake lever and the stock gear shifter and retailed for $200. As you can see from this video, I've had about 14 cups of coffee. Just kidding. I've run the video forward in high speed so that you can get a general idea of what is involved in removing and replacing rear sets without having to spend a lot of time watching the boring details. The fasteners on the rear sets from the factory are secured using Loctite, so you can expect these things to be difficult to break loose. In some instances, you may find that you need to apply heat in order to break loose the Loctite. I did not have to in this case. Next, I removed the rear brake master cylinder. Since I chose the economy version of rear sets, I will be reusing the rear brake lever, so I need to disassemble the rear set. Removing the rear brake lever requires unbolting the footrest from the rear set on this bike. Loctite was used at the factory, so I needed a vise in order to hold the footrest and the rear set while I turned the fastener. Assembly of the new rear sets calls for a waterproof lubricant, and here I am applying white lithium grease. The fasteners on the rear sets must have a thread locking material on them. These parts and fasteners are made from very hard metal. The fasteners, or bolts, will not stay tight without thread lock. The instructions with my set calls for red Loctite thread locker, which is intended to be permanent. Fasteners with red Loctite are generally very difficult to remove, usually requiring heat from a torch to help you break it loose. You have to make your own decision on whether to use red or blue, which is not quite as permanent. I followed the manufacturer's instructions using the more permanent red Loctite. Installing the new Woodcraft rear sets was intuitive and easy. My application is race only, and it eliminates the rear brake return spring and the rear brake light switch. Since I plan to race Wera Superstock class, I cannot cut out the rear brake switch. I chose instead to leave it intact and zip tie it up out of the way. Per the manufacturer's instructions, I used red Loctite to secure the fasteners in place. On my application, the stock boot guards are reused. Because the rear sets I purchased moved the pegs back and up approximately 5 millimeters, adjusting the rear brake lever was necessary. Once that is completed, I check to see that the rear wheel still rolled freely. Improper adjustment of the rear brake can cause the rear brake to bind, which of course would be unsafe. On my application, there is a cotter pin that has to be installed and bent. And finally, I'm ready to put the main fasteners in place using thread locker. So the right side is complete. Here you see the removal of the left side factory rear set. We're going to speed up the video a lot through this. You're probably already getting the picture about removing the fasteners. The stock shift lever and linkage is installed on the new rear set using a waterproof grease. I did a trial fit to line up all the connection points prior to applying the thread lock. Thread lock on the fasteners. As mentioned before, the new rear sets move the pegs up and back about 5 millimeters, so adjusting the shifter linkage was necessary. I have my shift pattern set up as a GP shift, which means the shift pattern is 1 up, 5 down, the opposite of the standard shift pattern. I had to get on and test the shift lever position a few times and make adjustments to finally get it right. Once the shifter is positioned right, tighten up the pinch bolt and you are finished.